Hey, it's Pete Mundo. Before the podcast starts, could you do us a favor at KCMO? We don't ask you for much outside of supporting our sponsors and advertisers. Could you leave us a 5-star rating and review? Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Helps us a lot. We so appreciate you doing that. Oh, this is just what you want to hear about with a year or so to go until the World Cup, when you're going to have hundreds of thousands of people reportedly flooding Kansas City looking for a place to stay. And they could be staying right in your backyard. Good morning, 6:05. It's good to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. We appreciate you joining us on 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So this was from KCTV5 yesterday. Great. I didn't see this story anywhere else, but this is really valuable reporting about a short-term rental, the Airbnbs, VRBO, that turned into the Wild West. It turned into the OK Corral last weekend. And the news is just coming out here on a Wednesday morning. KCTV5 had the story on how a pretty quiet neighborhood, just like due east, northeast of Nelson Atkins, went totally haywire on Friday night. Here's what it sounded like.
These gunshots that were fired around 4 a.m. on Friday night and picked up on this Ring camera. It all happened.
When you hear that, that's not like, whoops, my gun went off. Imagine that happening in the house next door to you, in a short-term rental, an Airbnb situation. That's the kind of stuff you hear in war. That's what that sounds like. That is not like, oh, man, someone got pissed and fired their gun in the air. That is, just to replay it, I think it's so valuable to hear that audio once more. Because when people say, oh, man, gunfire erupts at an Airbnb, you think, a shot, couple of shots, 2, 3, 4. This is at least a dozen shots from this short-term rental in KCMO.
These gunshots that were fired around 4 a.m. on Friday night and picked up on this Ring camera.
It's got to be 20 shots. That's got to be 2 dozen.
It all happened after a party
shots.
at a short-term rental spiraled out of control.
I was pissed more than anything else, really. Never expected around here. It's always been super quiet.
Cal McKibben says his home was far enough away from the chaos, but some of his neighbors weren't so fortunate.
These are my friends that have bullet holes in their houses.
2 bullet holes in the trunk. One went through the back panel.
This neighbor showed the damage done to one of his cars, bullet holes everywhere. And these photos are of his wife's brand new car, now destroyed.
Like that one went into our closet. These 2 went through.
Just across the street, Noah Holscher and his wife were jolted awake by the first round of shots.
She asked me, was that gunshots? And I said, yes, that was definitely gunshots.
He says what happened next was even more terrifying.
When I came to the front window to see what was happening, the shooter was standing here and it turned and looked at me before shooting more back down toward the street.
So you're there at 44th and Forest. You got a short-term rental situation in your neighborhood. That kind of gunfire erupts. You're like that guy. You run down to your front porch to see what the heck's going on. And then one of the shooters, because there obviously wasn't just one, looks at you and then looks down the street and starts shooting more. That was just this past weekend. So I bring this up and I tie it into the World Cup because here's what's going on in another part of town with short-term rentals. In Parkville, World Cup 2026, KCTV writes, is expected to bring an estimated $600 million to the Kansas City region next spring. As cities plan to handle the influx, Parkville is considering lifting restrictions on how short-term rentals are allowed to operate. So they're basically trying to give people more flexibility to run short-term rentals during the weeks that the World Cup is happening here in Kansas City. The changes would be temporary if approved, and they would take effect May 1 of next year through July 31st of next year. Parkville's Board of Aldermen is discussing temporarily lifting the number of short-term rentals allowed in the city during last night's meeting. If approved, it would also lift a restriction on the number of units that could be rented at any property. This is a disaster. Parkville should not be considering this, and no other municipality in the Kansas City area should be considering lifting short-term rental limits or restrictions for the World Cup. No way. Now, we've talked about how the clientele that is coming up for the World Cup is probably going to be a fairly high-end clientele, right? Like, I would say for the most part, that's the case. But do you know how many grifters and how many vagrants and just, I think, bad people with bad intentions also may end up in Kansas City? Because they're going to say, well, if 500,000 people are coming to town from who knows where, there might be some opportunity for us to do some bad things. I guarantee you. Now, I'm not worried about anything happening at Arrowhead. I'm not. I mean, that place will be as secure as any place in America when those games are going on. But if you think that there will not be bad people with bad intentions acting on those bad intentions right here in Kansas City and coming from maybe elsewhere to act on those bad intentions, you're just not paying attention. This place will be a breeding ground for people who are trying to commit crimes, especially because they'll know there will be a ton of international people who are not going to know where they are. They're not going to have any familiarity with Kansas City. Maybe some of these folks will know New York City. They might know L.A., San Francisco, D.C. They might have been there before. The likelihood that any of them have been to Kansas City for anything is slim to none. So when I see Parkville considering something like this, lifting their short-term rental clauses, and it comes on the heels of this story of gunfire erupting at a short-term rental at 44th and Forest over the weekend. That sounded like the Wild West in that clip we just played. It's like, no, your job is to look out for your homeowners and your residents during this period of time. People in Parkville who do not want anything to do with the World Cup should be allowed to live in peace and have no idea there's a World Cup going on if they want to live that way next summer. They should not be worrying about their neighbor trying to, rent their home for $1 over those couple of months. They should not have to worry about whether or not there are bad people with bad intentions living in their backyard for a few weeks. That is not something that they should have to worry about, or you should have to worry about, whether it's Parkville or anywhere else. This is a loser idea. Like, I'm all about capitalism. I get it. Capitalism's a thing, and I love it. But this notion that you just get to then say, hey, you know what? I'm going to rent my house out to anybody, and my city's going to drop the rules and regulations. Well, you know what else the city's doing? In Parkville's case, it's setting itself up for a potential lawsuit. Somebody's going to challenge that, because who are you to say when the rules should apply and when they shouldn't apply? Right? Who's to say, well, if there's a big concert coming to town, Taylor Swift, Morgan Wallen, hey, I'm just trying to capitalize off my home here. You can't tell me not to do that. You guys allowed me to do it during the World Cup. Now you get to pick and choose based on what events are happening in town, whether or not you drop those rules and regulations? No. So just don't do it. Do not go down this road. Stand firm on the restrictions that you have in Parkville. And I'm hopeful that other municipalities that may have some similar restrictions also don't start saying to themselves, well, let's drop these for a couple of months because people might need to make some money during the World Cup. And yeah, they might need to make some money because you keep screwing them on property taxes, but this is not the way to do it. Don't do it. Mark, don't go renting out your house next summer, okay? I don't want to see you sleeping in the parking lot during the World Cup because you rented out your house for, $7,000 for the month.
Can I charge my brother-in-law?
Yeah, sure, if you want. If he's willing to pay top dollar.
All right.
You can rent him a room.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or a couch.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can do that. That would be very nice. So you could even give him a discount for doing that. All right?
I'll let him stay for free. It's fine.
Really? Wow.
Such a nice man.
What a guy. What a guy, that Mark Van Sickle. 6:14, coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, a big decision today on the future of a major company in Kansas City. Kurt Skoog is the mayor of Overland Park. He will be here at 7:30 this morning on KCMO. We've got Alabama Lee Greenwood tickets at 7:45 on 95.7 FM. Big day today in Overland Park. That is where the Overland Park Finance Committee is going to consider this proposal from Black & Veatch. Of course, they've got their HQ here right on College Boulevard, right down the street from where we're at. And they are looking and proposing a new 612,000 square foot world headquarters for thousands of employees on the site, located right off 115th and Lamar. And they want to add 1,800 new housing units in a mix of apartments, townhomes, and condos, 550,000 square feet of retail space, a 160-room hotel, and parking structures for the development and surrounding area, along with a new public park right in the center. This would be more than 20 new buildings across the 80-acre site. The project would also fold into other surrounding developments like Galleria and Element 25, as Black & Veatch looks to, quote, create an expansive, walkable community focused on parts of the city with a vibrancy 7 days a week from morning until evening, according to the application.
Action words.
Yeah, those are sexy, aren't they? Expansive, walkable, vibrant.
Livability, sustainability.
Yeah, they love it. So Black & Veatch is requesting public financing for the $1 billion project, including $227 million in tax increment financing, which would use the increased property tax revenues from redevelopment to help cover its costs, and $19.9 million from a community improvement district with a 2% sales tax, and a sales tax exemption on construction materials. Why Overland Park would give Black & Veatch anything for this, I don't know. Not that I don't want Black & Veatch to remain a great, prominent employer in Overland Park and in the Kansas City area. I want that. We all should want that. But the notion that you have to do this when you're Overland Park doesn't make any sense. Overland Park is a great community. Overland Park doesn't need to prove itself to anybody. It is consistently voted and rated as one of the better places to live in the entire country when you look at some of the rankings. So if you're Overland Park, remember, you have leverage. That's right. Yes, I know. I know. You have leverage here. You don't need to do what every major company is begging you to do. You can say, listen, we're Overland Park. We're going to back our taxpayers here for once. And if you guys want to do this project, more power to you. It's not obvious that we need what you're wanting to build. I mean, does anyone really sit there and say, you know what Overland Park definitely needs more of? They need more apartments, they need more condos, and they definitely need more retail square footage. Is anybody saying that about Overland Park? Please let me know at 913-408-7957.
I heard that back in 1967. So
it's
been a while.
And how many millions of square feet in retail has been added since then?
Right,
Millions.
Oak Park Mall, right. They built Metcalf South. Metcalf South is gone.
It might be in the tens of millions with how Overland Park keeps growing out to the south, right? I mean, it's crazy. Nobody thinks that for a second. So this thing goes to the Finance Committee today. We will have Mayor Kurt Skoog on the show at 7:30 this morning. I will ask him about this. It is not about stopping progress. It is not about simply just not having apartments. It's about artificially creating and messing up your supply and demand. When this project for Black & Veatch is going to go on until 2038, if it gets approved by the Finance Committee and then the City Council, it could begin construction in 2026 and run through 2038 in phases. No one has any idea what the wants and the needs economically are going to be in 2038. I mean, we're worried right now about the future of retail. You think that there's going to be more demand for retail come 2038, John? That's crazy.
You know, I like to say finish this sentence. So, hey, you just want to stop the progress. Finish the sentence of wasting our tax dollars on things we don't need.
Yeah.
Finish the sentence.
Thank you for that. You're right. You're absolutely right. Black & Veatch, if they think this is a valuable investment for them, then they should do it. I'm all about it. If the Overland Park City Council is looking at this and saying, what do we do about it? Should we help them out with basically $250 million in TIF money? The answer is no. The answer is no, we're not doing this. There is not a clear incentive for us to do it. You guys are here. You have a solid base here. They are not going to pick up and leave. Fiserv just came to Overland Park, right? The company from the fintech company from Milwaukee is coming to Overland Park. Now, that's a whole separate deal, but they're, of course, taking over the Old Spring campus. People are looking at Overland Park. High quality of life, educated workforce, near a major metropolitan city. You've got all that going for you. What, Black and Veatch is going to pick up its bag and go home and move to Nashville because they didn't get this subsidy from Overland Park over this deal they want to build? That's not going to happen. So just say, no, we're going to pass on this one.
Right, and our prime feature is our location. We had a guest on talking about development. I can't remember if it was Patrick Toohey or if it was Dave Trobert, but we pointed out the region's location. It's 2 hours either way.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe 3, right?
So this project would fold into other surrounding developments, Galleria and Element 25. So I looked up Galleria, and I looked up this project that wrapped up here in the last year or so. They've got a few hundred apartment units, and they've got retail. It's the same old deal, right? So I looked up these apartments at Galleria. I was just curious kind of, what they're like. And they call them luxury apartments because, of course, everything is a luxury apartment these days. And this is right at College and Knoll. So primetime location, right? I've been to that Chick-fil-A right behind there. Reviews are not exactly great in the last couple of months for Galleria. One person writes, the walls are paper thin. No matter how much we tried to tolerate it, it felt like our lives were constantly interrupted. Another review from a few months ago at Galleria. Once again, this is a high-end luxury apartment complex. One person writes here, one of my female friends was harassed by somebody impersonating staff at the pool. Another person writes here, where was this one? Oh, this is a good one. After move out, I received a $150 carpet cleaning bill. Somebody else writes here that they were held up at gunpoint. That's right. Yeah, they were held up at gunpoint at this location. I'm just going through some of the Google reviews that I see here. And this is like primetime Overland Park and things that people are dealing with at a luxury apartment complex that Black & Veatch wants to basically compete with 1,800 apartment complexes and condos of their own. Other issues, writes one reviewer. Car break-ins. It's like, how much more of this do you need? Is this really the demand for what has made Overland Park great? I don't believe it is. But good luck trying to convince the city council of that in this town. We'll see how it plays out today. Mayor Kurt Skoog will be here at 7:30 this morning. Don't miss the conversation. Coming up next, new accusations about Joe Biden's prostate issue next. So we found this out yesterday. Biden's spokesperson saying that the president's last known PSA test was in 2014. That's the test for your prostate that men get, usually starting somewhere around 45, 50, and you find out whether or not you could be at risk of prostate cancer. Sounds like a lot of fun. Mark and I are not there yet, but that sounds like a great time, getting that PSA checked. It's things I can't wait to do in about 10 to 15.
River. The Chevy Chase in the Fletch movie.
Thank you, John. Well, I didn't see that reference coming this morning, but that is well done by you as always, my man. Well done. Nice job. So now a Biden spokesperson is saying that his last known PSA test was in 2014. Prior to Friday, President Biden had never been diagnosed with prostate cancer. Now, of course, if there's one thing we know about anonymous Biden spokespeople, it's that they would never lie about the president's health, right? Come on, man. No, they would never do such a thing. Never. But even if you take that at face value, the question becomes, why? Is it because of what my college roommate, Patrick Leidig, said yesterday? He's a urologist down in Georgia, and we had him on the show about 9 o'clock yesterday. If you missed the full conversation, It's up on the podcast. He was outstanding, did a great job explaining all this to us. But as he noted yesterday, you get your PSA if you're a guy check typically, 45, 50. And then what he said is that around 70, if your PSA remains at a certain low level, you can basically decide with your doctor that we don't need to check this anymore because this is unlikely to be the thing that's going to kill you. So if this is true, if Biden's last PSA test came back in 2014, that would have made Biden about 70, right? So did he then elect with his doctors to skip the PSA test because, who cares? Now, if he was just still Scranton Joe, I might believe that. But he's not. In 2014, he was the vice president of the United States, and for the last 4 years, he was the president of the United States. So you're telling me that the guy who's got the best health care on the planet, just because he was over 70, wasn't getting these PSA checks? It's entirely possible, but is it likely? And do the people that are telling you this deserve the benefit of the doubt? The people who told you that for the last 4 years, this guy was sharp as a tack, he, was as good as he's ever been, Joe Biden's running circles around his staff. I mean, this stuff, I can't even say it with a straight face anymore because it's so ridiculous and so bizarre. But here was my college roommate from Villanova, Patrick Leidig, urologist down in Georgia, explaining this with Biden yesterday.
Now, that brings us to Biden, who, he's, I believe he's going to be 82 or 83 this year. He is over 70. So, if you're strictly adhering to the guidelines, you would say, maybe we shouldn't check this guy's PSA anymore, especially we do know he has other health issues. Life expectancy, that's far from my judgment to make, but, he may get another 10 years or so. So, I think there could have been some guidelines-based medicine with him, being like he's over 70, his other medical problems, we shouldn't check this. But I think the flip side of that is, he is the president of the United States, and, he's still the leader of the free world. You need to be looking out for his health. I think he was still getting his routine screening colonoscopies. The PSA is a very accessible, cheap, easy test, and I think that was surprising to me. I looked up his physical results from last year, and I don't think a PSA was included, which... Again, if he wasn't president and he's my patient, I'm probably not checking it. But I think with him being president, that did kind of catch me by surprise that it either wasn't checked or wasn't reported.
And that's what a lot of people are wondering right now. How deep does the Biden health cover-up go? We know they covered up his mental acuity over his 4 years in office, and that, of course, coincides with this Jake Tapper book that came out actually yesterday. So does anybody involved here deserve the benefit of the doubt? No. I mean, the answer is obviously no. But is it possible that they're right on this? Yes, it is possible. There's no doubt about it. It is possible that Joe Biden just got screened for prostate cancer in the last few days, and this thing truly did pop up just magically days before this book was set to come out. Right? Now, if you believe that, you might also believe that James Comey just stumbled upon seashells that happened to share the numbers 8647, perfectly spaced on the beach, as he was getting ready for his book tour this week. You might believe both of those things to be true if you want to. It doesn't mean they are. In fact, I have a very difficult time believing that they are. But possible, yes. And the main reason for that is because I am not going to give the people in charge the benefit of the doubt. I can't. They have not earned the right to be given the benefit of the doubt, right? Like yesterday, one thing that my middle daughter and I, we enjoy doing. Usually I leave my car in the street when I get home because they want to play in the driveway. They're outside. And then after dinner, I'll bring it into the garage, bring it into the driveway, whatever it might be. So Chloe, my second one, she has enjoyed sitting on my lap while I pull the car into the driveway or into the garage the last few weeks. I mean, she thinks she's driving a car. She's got her hands on the steering wheel, but she's not really doing anything. Well, yesterday I had to pull both cars into the garage. So I pull Kate's car into the garage, I back it in, and then I go to get my keys. Meantime, she's running down the driveway. And she's almost at the end of the driveway. Now, we're not on a major road, but still, I mean, you can't have kids running into the middle of the street. So I start yelling at her, and I bring her back inside, and I tell her she cannot sit on my lap to pull my car into the driveway. And she had a meltdown, screaming, crying, banging on the window, watching me do it. And I said, listen, there's got to be repercussions here, right? That's life. I can't have you. I told you not to move. I said, stand right here. I'm going to get the keys. Takes all of 10 seconds. And next thing I know, you're sprinting down the driveway. So no, you will not be allowed to pull my car into the driveway with me, which she absolutely loves to do. It's like her favorite thing right now, sitting on my lap while I pull the car into the driveway. But I can't have it. There's got to be repercussions there. So when I think about it from the Biden perspective, there have got to be repercussions for the lies that they shared with the American people about this guy's health. You do not deserve the benefit of the doubt. If you're Joe Biden, his wife, Dr. Jill, or anybody on that medical team, no way, no how do you deserve the benefit of the doubt. 913-408-7957, our studio line and our text line on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, no one cares anymore about Joe. Why bother with this story? Okay, that's a good question. No, that is a very fair question, right? Like, I'm glad somebody asked that, actually, John. I know the person's upset, but I'm glad somebody asked that.
I know how to sum it up, teacher.
Okay.
I'll raise my hand.
Please, you want to go?
It's the principle of the issue.
Thank you.
The what, said the texter?
Yes, thank you very much. You're right. It's the principle of the issue. It's the fact that the American people were seemingly duped for 4 years about this guy's health, going back to the 2020 election when COVID allowed him to not have to basically campaign. He could campaign from the basement. He was basement Biden. Nobody knew what kind of shape he was really in. Showed up for a couple of debates, and that was it. And the media hyped him up like he was as sharp as he had ever been, when it was clear things were going downhill during that election. But it was the perfect storm. There was COVID. There was no reason for Biden to necessarily be out and about. Of course, his own political party milked the heck out of COVID, but that's neither here nor there right now. But we saw this with our own two eyes, and Biden's team covered it up, Jill covered it up, and a willing and complicit media covered it up. So that's why it matters. It's not about necessarily just Joe's health. It's about that media cover-up as well.
When you say Dr. Jill, I keep hearing Whoopi Goldberg from The View, and she is a doctor.
Oh, gosh.
Right? She always emphasized that. Well, remember that now, Whoopi?
Well, they should go to a bodega together and get some lunch. They can share medical notes there, Whoopi and Jill. Oh, boy. To be a fly on that wall, you got to be kidding me. Unbelievable. But that's the world we find ourselves in right now. 913-408-7957. Oh, no, now I'm getting shamed for not letting Chloe pull the car into the driveway with me yesterday. Pete, come on, Dad. Kids grow up too fast. Once you're convinced that she's learned her lesson, let her drive the car again. Yeah, she'll do it tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can just do it today.
Yeah, she's going to do it tonight. I'm just saying, last night I had to teach her a lesson. That's all. It's all good. No, it's not like there's a weak punishment here. She'll be back at it today. Although one day she asked me over the weekend, she's like, hey, can we go to the store and do this? I'm like, no. That's not how this works. No. We're literally going into the driveway from like the street. We can't drive to the store like this. Dad'll be in jail. You like Dad? You want Dad to stick around? Or you want him in the can? In which case, get in the back seat. 7:22. Kurt Skoog, the mayor of Overland Park, will be here in just over 10 minutes. Talk to him about this Black & Veatch deal that is on the table to renovate their HQ right now and also build out apartments and a park and retail and the whole deal, mixed use. So we will talk to him. This is a big deal potentially for Overland Park, and I think it is also controversial in terms of how it's being perceived. So we'll get to that here in a minute on KCMO. But in the meantime, President Trump, that clip, Mark, is in the audio cuts folder. This is the president of the United States talking to a small group yesterday about the World Cup. Of course, it's coming to Kansas City next year. The Olympics in 2028 will be not here, but in the United States as well. And Trump tells this story yesterday about how he cut those deals during his first term in office. And he was partially upset that he was not going to be able to be the president when these two events happened. At least that's what he thought. Well, of course, he will be the president when the World Cup happens. He will be the president during the 2028 Olympics because of these non-consecutive terms. But when he cut those deals, he was like, oh, man, like World Cup's coming, Olympics are coming, and people are going to forget that I'm the one that cut those deals. Here's what he had to say about it yesterday.
And we got the Olympics, and then we got through Johnny, who's the boss. He's a friend of mine. We got the World Cup. I got them both. And I said, man, I won't be president. I got the Olympics and the World Cup, and I won't be president. And they're going to forget that I got them. Nobody's going to mention it because, a little bit that's the way life is. And then they rigged the election. And then I said, you know what I'll do? I'll run again, and I'll shove it up their ass. And that's what I did. And all of a sudden, I then realized, I said, you know what? I got the Olympics, I got the World Cup, and I got the 250th. Look at the way this works out. So if they would have left us alone and wouldn't have cheated on the election and wouldn't have rigged it, I would have been retired right now. I would have been happily doing something else. And instead, they have me for 4 more years. Can you believe it?
Oh, my gosh.
So it has it.
He is getting such joy out of this, is he not? I came back and I shoved it right up their ass. Right up there. That's right. Oh, geez.
Such a nice man.
That's right. I did. Okay. He just can't help himself. He just can't. I mean, you're not going to teach the old dog new tricks. You just got to embrace it for what it is. It's just where we're at with this whole thing right now. So he will be the president for, of course, the World Cup next summer, which will be here in Kansas City. He will be the president for the Olympics in L.A. in 2028. And, of course, the 250th celebration of the United States, which is the other thing he was referring to there. Now, in Kansas City, this was sent to me by a couple of people ahead of the World Cup next year. There is a FIFA World Cup 2026 survey that's being sent around. And the survey is about transportation. So it asks you all these questions, how interested are you in pro soccer? Did you know we're having the World Cup? Would you attend one of the games? Have you ever used public transportation? Have you ever used the streetcar? Would you consider using public transportation to go to and from a World Cup game? And then this question 7, if public transportation services in Kansas City were improved for the World Cup, would you be interested in using the public transit services for any of the purposes listed below not related to the World Cup? College, school, work, medical, grocery shopping, none of the above, dining, entertainment. So then it goes on to ask you, all your information, household income, zip code. This question's good. How would you describe your gender? Male, female, non-binary. How would you describe your gender? No, like, what is your gender? Not how would you I don't want to get hung up on this, but like, what a weird way to ask what your gender is. How would you describe your gender, John?
Does it matter on public transportation?
Well, that's a good point
Why
as well.
ask?
Who cares?
Yeah.
That's a great point. But this appears to be a survey that in part is geared towards potentially spending taxpayer monies on a more robust, as I put up my air quotes, transportation plan for Kansas City. What if the World Cup is just being used as basically an avenue to try to build up some more forms of mass transit around town? Now, it can't all be done by next year, but if they do a little trial run, hey, whoa, look, streetcar, buses, we need more of this stuff. Is that potentially what the long-term play is for some people here in the conversation?
Gee, if we only had a train station we could have used as a central point for this mass transit some years ago, but we don't. Wait.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah, wait.
Hold on a second here.
Well, let's stick a Science City in there.
Right. Hey, the kids love Science City. Come on.
Right. And if any facility should deserve a high-tech new place, it would be Science City, but we're going to cram it in an old building and repurpose it downstairs in the old train station that we're not using for a hub for mass transit.
Tirade Tuesday was yesterday, John, okay?
Sorry.
The Code Pink folks were out in full force yesterday on Capitol Hill. The Code Pink gals, I guess there are some guys as well associated and affiliated with Code Pink. Far left organization, anything super woke, super lib, they will advocate and lobby and rally on behalf of. And yesterday Marco Rubio, who's come a long way from his little Marco days. Man, he is just, talk about a rising star. I would say, to make a sports analogy here, he's like the most improved player. That's who Marco Rubio has been as the Secretary of State. This guy was testifying yesterday morning before the House Foreign Affairs Committee on the State Department's 2026 posture on things like Israel, Hamas, the border, everything going on within and underneath the State Department. And you had anti-Israel protesters out in full force. And in some cases, they were getting kicked out of Marco Rubio's hearing yesterday, kicking and screaming. Here they were, and this is what it sounded like.
What is going on? Stop it! Israel is a genocide! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! I cannot live in peace! I will not be silent while there's a genocide going on!
No weapons to Israel.
Stop it! I cannot live in peace! I will not be silent!
Why do they all sound the same? Why is that exactly how you would expect people who are getting kicked out of a Capitol Hill hearing protesting Israel to sound?
Not an original idea, but the comedian Richard Pryor used to talk about how, guys would be, hey, baby, what's up? And then when they get mad, it's like, why do our voices as humans go up 22 octaves when we're shrieking? I can't even understand her. The dogs are starting to bark.
I know. It just, man, send them back. It's like, took her right out of Central Casting in Prairie Village or something like that. It just really sounds terrible. Although I do sound like that when I'm at dinner and I'm trying to get a point across with 4 women at the table.
Stop it! I cannot live in peace! I will not be silenced!
I cannot live in peace! I will not be silenced in my own home! That's me trying to get a word in at the dinner table every night. I got a 1-year-old screaming, and she is so loud. My goodness. My 1-year-old has got to be the loudest kid. I literally said to her yesterday, she's got this kind of raspiness to her, too. It like comes out of her diaphragm. So she's just doing her thing before dinner, making noises, seeing food, hungry. And it is so loud. And it's raspy, too. She's got like some oomph to that voice. And I said, Charlotte. I looked at her. She looks up at me. She has no idea what I'm about to say or can't even understand me, but she knows her name at this point. Said, how long have you been smoking? I mean, she sounds like a 20-year smoker. That's what I said to Kate. I said, now I know what it is. She sounds like a 20-year smoker.
Selma Simpson.
Yeah, exactly. For a 1-year-old, I've never heard anything like it. And the other two just don't stop. I can't imagine where they get that from, but they just don't stop. So, if you were to have like a camera or take a, fly-on-the-wall approach to my dinner table, I would sound like this lady. I just wouldn't be that shrieky.
Stop it! I cannot live in peace! I will not be silenced!
I won't be silenced anymore. I'm glad I talk for 4 hours a day, because if not, I would literally just be silent all day, every day. So I get my talking out here, and then I sit in silence the rest of the day, the rest of my waking hours. But to Marco Rubio, this guy yesterday, as part of this hearing before, of course, these obnoxious protesters interrupted him, was just, making some outstanding points on Capitol Hill, calling out the Democrats who were grilling him for their hypocrisy on the border. And here is part of what he had to say yesterday.
In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come, you're going to see who you went to defend.
Senator,
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court in the United States, because he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge and the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy.
Oh, that's so good. That's Marco Rubio laying into Chris Van Halen, a.k.a. Chris Von Hollen of Maryland. You know what? That guy that you went down to El Salvador and had a margarita with, that's great. And then Von Hollen's like, I take that one to court. Take that testimony to court, sir. It's like, hold on. Did you not have the margarita? Oh, that's right. He claims he didn't sip the margarita. The drink was there. We all saw the pictures. Okay? Find somebody who looks at you the way U.S. Senator from Maryland, Chris Von Hollen, looks at a wife beater who's in the country illegally. Please, if we all had somebody who looked at us like Chris looked at the El Salvadoran man or the Maryland dad, man, we'd all be just rocking and rolling. Divorce rates would drop to 0 in this country. That's how creepy and weird that guy was. And Rubio just not holding back. But he does it. He's very J.D. Vance-ish and esque in the way he just slices and dices these people. He has come so far from the little Marco heyday of 2015, 2016. And that is leading some to speculate that Marco Rubio is part of a 2028 ticket with J.D. Vance. And I'm getting excited just thinking about it. Here is Mark Halperin, Fox News, last night talking about this on the panel. Here we go.
Yeah, you know, when he was back in the Florida legislature, he was tagged as someone destined for, you know, a national profile. And his presidential campaign disappointed his supporters. But he is just one of the stars of this administration. Even if you don't agree with his policies, his knowledge of policy, his knowledge, his rhetoric, his confidence, and his winning over MAGA. He went a rough spell with MAGA over immigration, and now he is one of the heroes of the movement. And I said earlier today, I'll say it again, I really do think J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio could end up being a preordained ticket in 2028, unlike we've ever seen before.
The question is, Amy, who's on top?
Right.
Right,
I don't know the last time that a sitting vice president has lost a nomination. I think you have to go back maybe to the 50s. So that probably puts JD in a better position.
I like how she didn't say that would put JD on top, Mr. Bear. Yeah, maybe not the best way to phrase that one, Brett. But you know what? We all make mistakes, just like me. Live radio, live TV. Who's on top? You make a mistake once in a while. It happens, even at the highest levels. So that comment from Mark Halperin, Fox News panelist, a J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio ticket, that is music to my ears. Because what those guys are that next wave of the Donald Trump movement that is not going to be Donald Trump. You're never going to duplicate Donald Trump from just a celebrity, comedic, entertainment personality perspective. But what those guys are is not as funny, not as entertaining, not as gregarious, not as big of a personality. You can't top Trump. But what you can do is take Trump's movement and, first off, make it much younger, bring it to the next generation, and frankly, be a little bit more efficient and being actually able to explain the movement in a better way than Trump does. Trump is a showman. Trump is the beautiful bill. Everything's the best, the greatest. Like, that is Trump. But these guys, I believe, have an ability to explain it in a way that actually might be more appealing to people who are not Trump supporters. That's what a guy like J.D. Vance and a Marco Rubio can do to move the ball forward and keep the ball moving in the right direction on the whole MAGA agenda and Trump movement. Trump's going to be Trump. Trump has not changed really stylistically in 10 years. So when you're looking for that next, don't just try to duplicate him because you can't. Take the guys who have the ability to maybe broaden that umbrella and broaden that tent and explain things in a way that Trump really doesn't do. And JD and Marco, to me, would be the perfect guys to do it. I know that's years down the road, but man, it just, when Mark Halperin said that last night on Fox News, I was like, oh my goodness, sign me up for this as quickly as possible. Because that, I mean, barring something unforeseen, unless just the wheels fall off here, and I don't even know what could happen, scandals, whatever it might be, are involved, I don't know how you could possibly top that right now. There will be a lot of people lining up. Trust me, a lot of people lining up. But something that would be wise for the Republicans as well is to not have a super nasty primary. Save your bullets, no pun intended, for a general, and just let it go from there. Let the Democrats have the nasty primary, because they're the ones right now who have a lot of infighting and have absolutely zero leadership. Chris in Kansas City, go ahead, my man. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. I love the J.D. Vance Rubio ticket. And what a lot of Americans don't know is that those two gentlemen represent the American dream, given their ultra humble beginnings for both of them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had I'm from South Florida. I know Rubio's story very well, but it is as compelling as the current vice president. Here's my question to you. So Rubio has been heck bent on becoming president. Do you think I don't want to say he goes quietly into the night as a VP on the ticket, but if you're a betting man, would you see a primary, showdown for him, for his supporters to push him to be atop of the ticket?
Yeah, I could see them both being in a primary. The question is, can Trump basically convince these guys that they're better off working together versus having a nasty primary and, trying to set up the party for success in 2028? And if anyone can do it, obviously it would be Trump.
I agree with you. I just wonder if Marco believes that it's truly. He is of all the cabinet members, he's truly, top of the ticket. He's the best, statesman, there is, and he's definitely grown. But I know it's gonna be interesting. I'm torn between the two. I like them, both. But I think for the good of the party and the good of the country, maybe, and given the statistics that there hasn't been a vice president to not be nominated from the current administration, I do see Marco getting behind them with the goal of, becoming, president, 8 years later, but who knows?
And here's the other thing. Thanks, Chris. That's a good point. The other thing is if Trump basically says, listen, guys, this is what we'll do, JD and Marco, what's Marco going to do? Say no? I mean, the minute that Trump comes out then and says, all right, JD, you're the guy, and Marco, you're dead to me, Marco's got no political future. So he can either play along and say, you know what, VP's pretty damn good, and maybe I got a shot down the road after that. He's still a young man to at some point run for the top of the ticket. But if Trump calls the shots and says it's JD and Marco, what's Marco going to say? I'm going to do this on my own? I mean, then it's over for him. Everything's over for him. So he can't really do that either. On the text line, Pete, Marco is going to be the next governor of Florida after DeSantis. Now, I think Byron Donalds and maybe even Casey DeSantis, Ron's wife, looks like they could be the two battling that one out down in Florida. I don't think Marco's going that route. Coming up, James Comey continues to speak out in the wake of Seashell Gate. And he continues to talk to the biggest hacks he can find. We'll tell you who he talked to and what he said coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio. So if you're James Comey and you were looking to do some cleanup on aisle 9 about the seashell controversy, the seashells he just magically stumbled upon on the beach last week that rolled out 86.47, where would you go if you were trying to be an honest broker? The last places that you would go are to Nicole Wallace on MSNBC, which is where he went 2 days ago. And then yesterday, he goes to Colbert's show. Stephen Colbert is the biggest liberal hack on late night TV. Yes. Jimmy Kimmel. Excuse me, not Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert says to Jimmy Kimmel, hold my beer, I will one-up you on wackadoo, far-left, sycophantic type late-night humor, John.
Well, Kimmel's just a comedian. Colbert's a shill.
I know.
Right?
Yes,
yeah.
You're right. There's
a little bit of a difference.
He's the worst of the worst. He really is.
Yeah. Well, and so's the female on, what's her name there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when Colbert did the COVID dance? Do you remember they all danced up as COVID shots and went through the aisles at the show, and they made a parody song about how you should get your shot? We played it on the air, I remember, like 4 years ago. But it was the most pathetic thing I've ever seen in my life. But that was Stephen Colbert. That is Stephen Colbert. So that's where James Comey decided to go last night. And here's what James Comey sounded like.
Is this Instagram?
Instagram,
You
yeah.
grammed this. You were walking down the beach. What happened? You were walking down the beach, and you saw this on the beach?
Yeah, my wife and I, Patrice, were walking on the beach and saw those numbers in shells on the beach. And
you didn't do this. Somebody else did this.
Yeah, somebody else did it. We were on a walk preparing for this week, the rollout of my book.
Yep.
She looked at it and said, why'd someone put their address in the sand?
All right.
And then we
8,000
stood at it,
employees.
looked at it, trying to figure out what it was. And she'd long been a server in restaurants. And she said, you know what I think it is?
Yeah.
I think it's a reference to restaurants when you would 86 something in a restaurant.
Right, it's off the menu.
Yeah. I said, no, I remember when I was a kid, you'd say 86 to get out of a place. This place stinks, let's 86 it.
Right, I was a bartender. You would 86 a customer if they were getting drunk. Like, let's 86 them. Let's, like, give them a low-proof alcohol, something like that. Yeah.
And so I said, I think it's a clever political message. And she said, you should take a picture of it. I said, sure. And then she said, you should Instagram that. And boom.
Okay, all right. Here's the problem for James Comey. He's doing too much explaining.
Mm-hmm.
James Comey is the guy who gets caught in a lie by his significant other. And if you are explaining, you're losing. This story is too well rehearsed to believe. My wife worked in the food industry,
Bingo. His wife does a lot of the thinking in this conversation, doesn't she?
Clearly, yeah. You got to take a picture. Oh, let's post that picture. Oh, my goodness.
Well,
wait,
she was a server.
I'm going to kill Trump. Whoa, I didn't mean that. It's like, okay, Jim, you're explaining too much. When you're explaining, you're losing. And I know that Colbert and his fanboys are going to clap like a bunch of seals. I understand that. But you've got to stop and you've got to knock it off. Okay? You're not helping your cause here, Jim. All right, Jim? You're not helping the cause, my man.